Welcome to Thinker's Library Big Ideas, one book at a time. Let's turn the page.
Let me tell you a story. A young boy, Robert, is growing up in Hawaii. He has two fathers. One is highly educated, a PhD, a man who values hard work, job security, and saving money. This is his poor dad. The other father dropped out of school young, yet builds a business empire. He values financial education, investing, and letting money work for him. This is his rich dad, the father of his childhood best friend, Mike. As Robert grows up, he finds himself torn between these two voices. One says, go to school, get good grades, and find a safe job. The other says, learn how money works, take risks, and build assets. This is the tension at the heart of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it's not just about two men, it's about two mindsets. And you, reader or listener, will find yourself somewhere between them. It all started when Robert was 9. He and Mike wanted to be rich. They asked Mike's dad, the rich dad, to teach them. And so began the lessons. Not in a classroom, but in real life. At first, Rich Dad made them work in one of his convenience stores for 10 cents an hour. They complained. But he told them, if you want to learn how to make money, don't expect to be paid for it. He was teaching them a vital truth. The poor and middle class work for money, but the rich make money work for them. Poor Dad would have told them to get a job and save their earnings. Rich Dad told them to study money, business systems, and investment. It wasn't about greed, it was about freedom. Imagine this, you're stuck in a cycle. Wake up, go to work, get a paycheck, pay bills, maybe save a little, repeat. This is the rat race, and it's what Rich Dad warns against. He teaches young Robert that money is a tool, and those who master it can escape the rat race. But those who don't, even if they earn more, will remain stuck. Here's the difference. Poor Dad works for job security. Rich Dad builds financial freedom. Robert realizes that schools teach people how to be employees, not owners or investors. That's why even many high-income earners are still financially insecure. Rich Dad's first big truth?
Don't work for money. Learn how to make money work for you.
Here comes the cornerstone of the book, one that Rich Dad drilled into Robert's mind again and again. The rich buy assets. The poor and middle class buy liabilities they think are assets. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. So what does this mean in practice? Your house? Often a liability. It costs money to maintain and doesn't generate cash flow. A rental property? An asset. If it brings in more money than it costs. Stocks, bonds, royalties, businesses, all potential assets. Robert realized that many people are financially struggling. Rich Dad said, quote, the single most powerful asset we all have is our mind. If trained well, it can create enormous wealth. But what do most schools teach? Geometry, Shakespeare, history, all valuable, but nothing about taxes, investing, real estate, or how to read a financial statement. So Rich Dad became Robert's personal finance teacher. He taught him how to read income statements and balance sheets, the difference between earned income, passive income, and portfolio income, why the tax code favors business owners and investors. Robert says you don't need to be a genius to be rich. You just need to understand how money works, something your school likely never taught you. The more you learn, the more you earn. But not in the traditional sense. You earn more because your money multiplies through investments, not just your labor. Many people stay poor not because they lack opportunities, but because they're ruled by fear. Fear of losing money, fear of looking foolish, fear of stepping away from the known. Poor Dad would say, be careful, don't take risks. Rich Dad said, Take calculated risks. Fail, learn, repeat. Robert learned that your mindset, not your job or salary, determines your wealth. Rich people see opportunities. Poor people see obstacles. Rich people invest in learning. Poor people invest in comfort. This chapter is deeply motivational. It tells us that anyone can become rich, but not everyone will, because not everyone is willing to think differently, take action, and face discomfort. Early in his life, Robert worked for Xerox as a salesman, not because he wanted to sell copiers forever, but because he wanted to learn the skill of selling. Rich Dad encouraged this. Don't work for the paycheck, work for the knowledge. So, Robert tried jobs in accounting, marketing, and investing, all with the purpose of gaining skills he could later use to build his businesses. The lesson is clear. Your job is not your end goal, it's your training ground. Develop communication. Learn leadership. Study money. Every experience becomes an investment in your financial IQ. Rich Dad taught young Robert how the wealthy use corporations as financial tools. Here's the insight. Employees earn, get taxed, and then spend what's left. Corporations earn, spend on expenses, travel, reinvestment, and then get taxed on what remains. By learning how businesses are structured, Robert realized he could legally minimize taxes, reduce risk, and scale wealth. You don't need to be a millionaire to use this strategy. Even a small LLC can protect assets, open tax opportunities.
Robert began investing in real estate, building companies, and letting assets generate income. It wasn't always smooth. He failed, lost money, made mistakes, but he kept learning, kept applying Rich Dad's teachings. Eventually, Robert reached financial independence, when his assets produced more income than his expenses. At that point, he no longer had to work for money. Money worked for him. His life's mission became teaching others what Rich Dad taught him. Rich Dad, Poor Dad became the seed of a global movement, urging people to wake up, take control, and stop living paycheck to paycheck. This book isn't about getting rich quick. It's about changing your relationship with money. It teaches think differently, invest in yourself, buy assets, learn financial literacy. Don't let fear stop you. Poor Dad gave Robert love and traditional values. Rich Dad gave him financial intelligence. Together, they shaped a man who would later help millions think differently about wealth. Now, the choice is yours. Will you follow the path of Poor Dad, safe but limited, or Rich Dad, uncertain but abundant? The only difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they use their time. Robert Kiyosaki.